So welcome to those of you who are joining us from schools all over the country. Today's webinar is all about working at an organisation called Illumina, which we'll hear a little bit more about in a bit. My name is Jo Foster. I'm the director of the Institute for Research in Schools, and I'm really delighted to be hosting this webinar because one of the things that we really want to do is to give all you guys out there an opportunity to find out a bit more about the huge range of opportunities in STEM careers. So Ella, James and Beth have joined us today to talk a little bit about their jobs, which are very varied, how they got into them, what they like about them, and maybe what they don't like about them. And we can find a little bit about how they got there, which hopefully might help you guys in your journey to get wherever you want to go. So what I'm going to do first of all is ask each of the panel members to introduce themselves, and then we'll talk a little bit about their jobs and lots of interesting things about their jobs. Now, as we go, I would encourage you to ask questions via the Q&A button. So the questions probably will get answered, maybe some on the way through and maybe some at the end, but if you would like to submit a question, then please click on the Q&A button and we will answer them as we go. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce the panelists. Ella, do you mind introducing yourself and just telling us what your job title is to start off with, please?
Hi everyone, I'm Ella and I'm a purchasing agent here at Illumina.
Thank you, fantastic. Now, for those of us who are a bit harder thinking like me, can you tell me a bit more? I mean, purchasing agent sounds terribly important.
Yeah.
Tell me, we are going to hear a little bit more about what you do in your average day, but kind of if you put that into layman's speak, what would that be?
So I work in procurement, which I'm aware that a lot of people probably won't know what it is either. I didn't even know what it was like 2 years ago. But I work in supply chain, so procurement, the indirect side of it. So that's anything that anyone in the company wants to purchase. So I work with like all different departments. For example, like if I work with R&D, if they want to buy any chemicals for like their research, anything that's in the office, like all the facilities, I'll help with the purchasing for that. Yeah, so I work on like purchasing basically, but not related to the products that Illumina sells, but more general to like the company and what anyone wants, if that makes a bit more sense.
It does, great. Okay, so you're making sure that everyone's got the stuff that they need for certain parts of the operation.
Yeah.
Great, thank you very much, Ella. And James, you're on my screen next. Could you just say what your job title is?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm James. I am a bioinformatics scientist. So bioinformatics, for those who might not know, is kind of a marriage between biology and computer science. It's a very broad area in itself. I must admit, I didn't know anything about what that was when I was studying biology. I didn't know such a thing as bioinformatics existed. And effectively, it's using a lot of computer science and programming and data analysis to understand the huge amount of data that Illumina, sequencing data Illumina produces. So a human genome if you read the human genome as a book, it would take you 95 years to actually read it. So we need some programming or some kind of way to actually make this information understandable and usable. So my role is we produce this data all the time, is we actually take the raw data and sort of refine it and make it so it's understandable and interpretable by doctors and clinicians, and actually understand from this mass amount of data what is actually important to know. So where I step in is a lot of this happens on a sort of automatic software, but a lot of the time there's some sort of problems with certain genomes or certain sequencing results. They might not be happy, the QC might fail, some things might not work when it's go there, it might not actually be able to get to the patient, and you have to understand what is actually causing this issue, go in and try and fix what's happened with that. Also, it's a lot of trying to get it done quicker, better and faster. If you enjoy any kind of automation or you hate having to manually click through things to do things, part of my job is to try and figure out how do we reduce the amount of basically clicking or the amount of manual work from people to actually make it so that we can actually deliver these results quicker in a faster way. Oh, I think you muted, Joe.
You're on mute, Joe.
I totally lost my cursor then. I'm sorry. I knew I had to unmute, but I've actually managed to get till, what is it, Tuesday afternoon without anyone saying you're on mute, and then 4 people. I knew I was on mute. I just couldn't find my cursor. So James, loads of info there, and I think actually to help the young people who are watching who haven't seen the kind of explanation of what Illumina is video, could you just give us in a couple of sentences what your company does?
Yeah, so Illumina is evolved in DNA sequencing and all the technologies around DNA sequencing. So that's taking your the DNA and producing it and producing basically the sequencing results from that DNA. So it's taking whatever material it may be, getting DNA from blood, from saliva, from any other sources, and being able to actually turn that into a human readable format so you can actually understand what it is. To do this, you need sequencing machines, which is Illumina cells. You need all the kind of the reagents to actually make those machines runs. You need lots of other roles and lots of other areas, which I'm sure Ella and Beth are going to talk about more. You need a whole kind of wide array of people to help keep those machines running. You need research teams to make machines better. You need people like myself who, when the data doesn't quite make sense or there's a problem with it, to try and fix that data. So that effectively, that's in a very broad nutshell what Illumina does.
That's great, thank you. I didn't dare to put myself on mute again then, but thank you very much. So one of the things you said during the explanation there was that if you were to read the entire human genome, it would take you 95 years. And I'd like to add to that it would also be extremely dull. I mean, very repetitive, right? Very repetitive. Those of you doing A-level biology or even GCSE biology will know why. And I think that one of the ways that I understand the work of gene sequencing is almost like you take all of the, if you imagine the human genome's like encyclopedias full of essentially letters for bases. You take that encyclopedia, what you can do is kind of put really specific like chapter headings. Here are the genes for this, or if you want to find the gene for this, go to page blah blah blah, or click here and it takes you straight there. Now we at Iris have had a project which some of you watching might have been involved in called Genome Decoders, where we worked with the Sanger for you guys to help us decode some genes. And actually what we used there was a program called Apollo, where essentially the computer, and James, I'm likely to mess this up, so feel free to correct me, but essentially artificial intelligence splits the genes by looking for sort of start and stop codons and things like that, but humans go in and check whether that's been done correctly or whether there are areas which aren't quite right. And James in his talk mentioned QC, which I think is quality control. So this is where actually what you're expecting doesn't match up with what you're seeing, and that's where humans need to go in and work out, okay, where did this go wrong and where actually does this gene start or end. And this is really important because we know that particular genes are important for particular things like illnesses or areas of ill health or things like that, genetic issues. And so if we can work out where they are, it might be that we can work out how to help with some of those diseases. It's also super important for things like COVID, because we can identify what sort of COVID, whether there are mutations and whether they're spreading and all of those sorts of things. So it's really really topical at the moment. So we have got at the moment a big data project about COVID. So if you're interested in that aspect, then you can have a think about that. But also we are excited about a potential new project next year looking at the essentially looking at the genome of a bat or some bat species. So this is really relevant to some of the projects you could get involved in if this area is something that interests you. So Beth, I'm very sorry to keep you waiting, and I'd love to hear about what your job title is and sort of a little bit of information about that.
Yep, hello, can you hear me right? Good. So my role is a field application scientist. So what that means is I am out in the field helping out labs using our products, which is really nice. And I actually specialise in our oncology products, which is our cancer products. So yeah, so I can explain my day-to-day as well whilst I'm here. It might help to explain what my job is as well a bit more. So once we have released a product into the field, I kind of help any customers train up to use that product and help them whilst they're using that product, and kind of help them from start to finish, you know, introduce them to the product, training them, letting them use it, troubleshoot if they need it, and also help them look at the data as well.
Great. A couple of things there which I want to pick up on. Firstly, the use of in the field. So I'm an ecologist. So when I say in the field, I mean literally in the field. But of course, what it means for most organizations is like out with the customers, out with the people who are using the machines and things. And you talked about the product a few times. Can you tell me roughly, I realize there'll be lots of different products, but roughly what that is? So in my head, I've got like a thing that looks like a PCR machine. I don't know if that is the sort of thing that you sort of go to people with and say, right, here it is, this is how you use it. Am I about right with that?
Sort of. So when I say products, the products I help come before we put them onto our machines that sequence. So when you have your sample, you need to kind of prepare it and make sure it has all the reagents and is ready to go onto the sequences to then get all our A, T, Gs and Cs to then go on to someone like James to look at all that data. So I help support our products that help prepare those samples to then sequence them, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does make sense, and also probably will make sense to some A-level students who've used things like buffers and things like that with their experiments in maybe chemistry or biology. And the other thing you mentioned is that you're working in oncology. So I expect, although again, ecologist, so maybe wrong, that one of the things that maybe these labs are doing is sequencing, for example, tumours and finding out what type of tumour they are and therefore what sort of drugs they might respond to. So a really important part of cancer treatment that you're supporting.
Yeah, exactly that. So obviously we know that certain genes are affected or involved in different cancers. So being able to sequence that and see exactly which gene or which mutation they have helps kind of target them to certain medicines, which is really useful to patients.
Fantastic. So when you explain, so you already sort of started what you do in a day. So you go places. So you're in your car, off to a hospital lab or off to a company lab or something like that, and helping them set them up. So so today, have you been somewhere in your car? Have you had to travel today, or is today a day where you haven't had to do that?
Today is not a traveling day. Yeah, so my job is quite interesting because it involves working, you know, hands-on in a lab, you know, pipetting and helping out customers, but it also involves being in calls and helping them troubleshoot through Zoom or Teams, which I'm sure everyone is very well aware of now. So yeah, so it can be working from home or out in my car driving to a customer site.
Great, thank you very much. So Ella, are you okay to tell us a little bit about your sort of typical day?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, it's quite hard like describing a typical day because I feel like especially in purchasing, and like I said, I work with like a lot of different departments. It is very broad, and obviously everyone needs to purchase stuff to do whatever they're doing. But like, for example, I look through like purchase requisitions and check through those. So it's sort of like liaising between the requisitions that the Illumina employees want to make, and then that getting sent out to the supplier. So making sure everything's correct, the supplier like understands what Illumina wants to purchase and like what needs to be sent out, etc. So for example, like if there's some R&D teams and they're working on a specific project, they need like chemicals or they need certain equipment, then they'll make purchase requisitions through like our software that we use, and I'll be on the other side of that, just checking through everything's fine, approving it, and then that will then get sent out to our suppliers. And so that's like just one part of it, but I also do a lot with like supplier requests. So if someone wants to, they've seen something they want to purchase from like a new supplier, then they'll come and contact me and my team, and they'll say, we really want to onboard this supplier, like why we need this. And then I'll go through an onboarding process for that. But what's really like interesting about, I think, about it is that because Illumina is like expanding quite a lot, like it's a global, like a huge company. So if there's new sites, so for example, like recently they branched out more to Dubai, or everything that they'll be setting up for that will have to go through for procurement. So all the like facilities, like all of that, they'll come to make like contracts, and procurement will look through that, and it'll sort of just like, yeah, basically like if you go into an Illumina office, everything there would have had to go like via procurement. So yeah, I think it's just really interesting, and also just getting to like talk to a lot of people in the company, and yeah, just understanding sort of the bigger picture of what everyone's doing and a lot of people are doing. Yeah, so my day-to-day is, that's a few of my things that I do day to day. But yeah, also then just dealing with if there's any issues between like people in the company, if they haven't received items, or yeah, they're like sort of asking, they come to me for if they need help regarding anything that they've purchased.
So it sounds like you have to have a real eye for detail. Like it's really important, because people presumably sometimes fill in their purchasing orders wrongly, or not.
Yeah.
You have to sanity check things a bit, like, you know, when I tried to order 3 carrots and got 3 kilograms when I did my Sainsbury's order, that sort of thing. But also I'm intrigued, and this may be something you can't answer because it might be a secret, but I want to know, what's the weirdest thing you've ever had to procure?
Well, it's like very broad, but like, so recently we've been having some like supplier requests for, I don't know, it'll be like just the plants, and so it was like a plant supplier for in Dubai, and it felt very random that it was like I was sort of helping out with that. But yeah, that was something that I found kind of funny.
You mean like green plants?
Pardon?
You mean like green plants, like photosynthesizing?
Yeah, like,
right, okay, so you had to get some plants from Dubai.
It was like plants for the office in Dubai.
Oh, okay. Wow, okay.
But yeah,
okay.
so that's not really like as sciencey, but yeah, there'll be like a lot of purchasing for chemicals, but obviously it's quite secretive in Illumina, like all the specific labs are doing. But
yeah. Okay, that's interesting though, because it, I guess, gives you an idea of the sort of worldwide reach of your organization. You know, if you're sitting in an office wherever you are, in the UK somewhere, and you're buying plants from somewhere in Dubai for an office in Dubai. Yeah, excellent. Okay, thank you very much, Ella. So James, so a really different, I'm imagining quite a different sort of day for you than for Ella. What's your typical sort of day? What do you get up to?
Yes, I guess a little bit different. It's kind of similar in terms of it's lots of varies, and sometimes we have urgent problems come in, and we have lots of issues that come in. I say it's more of a reactive role than a proactive role. Whereas in the laboratory, you're producing data, you're pipetting, you're sequencing, you're doing daily tasks. In bioinformatics, it tends to be there's a problem with certain tumor sequencing. It's producing strange quality control data. Can you look at these data? Can you use different tools? Can you write a few different analysts? Can you run a few different analysis, understand what's the issue, what's causing the problems? So sometimes you come in and you'd be quite happily having a cup of tea, quite a nice chill day, answer a couple of emails, and all of a sudden this massive urgent thing will come in and we need the pipeline stopped. There's a problem here with the data. So that's kind of the main priority, is to try and make sure that any issues or any problems with the data and make sure the data is of good quality to go through. But then also we have a lot of tasks which is resolved around, can we improve the speed of the analysis? So it takes 10 hours to analyze a genome, to take the raw data and produce a finished result. Can we reduce that down? Can we make a better algorithm to work with it? Can we then look at the system as a whole? Can we look at how many genomes we've produced, how many have got certain issues or certain problems? Can we find better management, better systems or better programs to actually run to reduce this time? So it's kind of trying to make things automated, basically automate yourself out of a role, but also on dealing with any issues that come throughout the day.
So it sounds as though you, James, have a lot of opportunity for problem solving, for having ideas and then testing them out, presumably, but simultaneously the pressure of trying to solve a problem which might be slowing down, like a cancer genome being.
Yeah, I think that's the great thing. I think having that kind of pressure is really quite nice, because you have to problem solve, but then when you do manage to solve a problem, it's directly helping deliver an actual clinical result to a patient. It's really nice that when it's not kind of it's not a sort of a theoretical problem that you've managed to solve. It's an actual applicable, you've solved this problem as part of a team as well, which is really nice. You go back to the laboratory and say, we've got this issue. You might contact someone like Beth, who's, and ask certain questions about a product and go, we need this. Or you contact Ella in procurement and be like, actually, we need this new supercomputer to help us actually deal with this kind of issue. But having that kind of pressure and actually problem solving combined, while it can be stressful sometimes, but it is useful and is fun when you actually get it resolved.
How many of you work? How many people do you kind of regularly sort of talk to in your team? How many in that team that you work in?
It's a really good question. So we've got like 20 in our team. So we've got myself we have almost subcomponents of the team. You have more people who are more focused on the software side of it. So if there's a glitch or an issue with the actual software used, we have the engineers who deal with the actual running of the machine, so you can sort of collaborate with them. And then you've got other people in our team who are more focused on the data analysis. But then you've got the wider Illumina as well. You've got in wider Illumina, you've got a couple of thousand. So you've got that whole resource pool of people you speak to. And sometimes, like, you are speaking to someone in San Diego or in Singapore who's an expert on this particular type of genome to speak to them about and collaborate with. So it varies.
So before I was the director at Iris, I was a teacher for nearly 20 years, and so many young people, when I talked to them about what they wanted to do in the future, lots and lots said things like, I want to help to find a cure for cancer. Like that particular, this was pre-COVID, so I don't know how many would talk about things like pandemics now, but it occurs to me, James, that it's very unusual for these young people to come across someone who is actually doing that. But that's what all three of you are doing. You're all part of this team who is helping to find the solutions, which I think is great, because, to be honest, even probably 5 years ago, I wouldn't, actually maybe 5 years ago, probably 10 years ago, I wouldn't have known what a bioinformatician was. And actually, I've had to practice quite a lot saying that word, because I still struggle a bit with that. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the things that you maybe are up to, James. And Beth, we've already heard about your day. So I'm going to ask the next question, which is about how you got into your job. So I know that for lots of people, there are plans, or there are, you sort of just walked into it because it happened to be the right one at the time. I'm just interested to hear from you, because obviously we're being watched by young people who are about to make big decisions about things like university or apprenticeships or, gap years or whatever. And I'm just interested to hear from each of you how you got into where you are now, and maybe how long you've been there, if you're happy to share that too. So Ella, if you don't mind going first.
Yeah, sure. So like I said earlier, procurement was not something that I even knew what it was like at school, or even like when I started uni. I went to university to study biology just because I really loved the subject. And I did really love my course, and I knew I wanted to stay within science, but towards the end I realized I didn't necessarily want to be in a lab. I felt like I wanted to be more on the businessy side of it. And I had a summer job working in a warehouse just sort of to earn money, but also it was kind of linked because it was a pharmaceutical warehouse, so it's still, I was working with scientific products. And that sort of is when I really discovered supply chain and what it even was. And then after, when I was sort of applying for jobs, I saw Illumina specifically, because I'd seen it but previously, and I was really interested in what they do. And I was previously looking at a lab role, but then I saw that they had like this opening for a supply chain intern. And I like that sort of incorporates being in a scientific field, still working like towards the like good cause of improving like human health, but sort of on the businessy side of that. And yeah, so I graduated only last year and started as an intern last July. And then, so as in part of my internship, I got to work with the procurement team, but then also other teams within supply chain. So distribution, which is sort of the other side of it, more with like the customers, like distributing the actual products. And there was a job opening in procurement. So yeah, I applied for that and here I am. So I kind of did fall into it, but yeah, no, I'm really like, I knew that it's sort of the skills that I wanted to be working with, or like I wanted to do like problem solving. And so I like that working in supply chain is quite like a fast-paced environment, and I knew that was something I wanted to be in. So yeah, it kind of all fit, and I've been enjoying it. So.
And I imagine maybe a bit of a baptism of fire joining mid-COVID, when supply chains of all sorts of sort of biomedical things have been a bit difficult.
Yeah, no, it has been like very tricky for the team, obviously, especially in procurement. There's been a lot of supply constraints. I know like I wasn't there exactly when the pandemic started, but they had a lot of issues with like gloves, for example, because obviously like everyone needed, like all the labs and all that needed gloves. And then yeah, there was just a lot of constraints with a lot of the R&D products, because obviously so many big companies were working with COVID and how to sort of help that.
Yeah, no one was expecting every single organisation and individual in the world to want their own box of latex gloves. Yes, great. Thank you very much, Ella. That's terrific. I think, Beth, I'll go to you next, if that's okay, because I skipped you in the last question because you'd already answered it. So yeah, how did you get into your job? What was your pathway in?
Yeah, so mine, I finished high school / sixth form and had no idea what direction or what I wanted to do, essentially. I knew that I enjoyed science. I liked biology and the disease side of it. So I went to university and studied biomedical sciences. Whilst I was at university, I completed a few summer placements where I literally emailed and spammed a million labs that were near my house and were like, hi, like, can I come in for a few weeks and just watch what you're doing? And a few did get back to me, or a few passed me on to others, and I managed to secure a few lab experiences, which was really good. And then in my third year of my degree, I did a placement year at Illumina. This is when you take a year out of your degree and work in the industry, you know, out in a proper company, which was really useful for me, because I actually got to see like, oh yeah, like I learned this last year in the classroom, and now I can actually see, you know, why I learned it and why it's important. And it was really nice there to get the hands-on experience. And then after you do your placement year, I went back to uni, did my final year. And then I graduated and had the sudden panic of, what do I do now? So in the meantime, I actually worked in the COVID labs on the PCR testing for a bit, which was really nice, because you felt like you were actually helping, because you knew that everyone needed these tests for various reasons. And then, yeah, my old manager from my placement happened to message me and say, look, I know you've got interest in oncology and there's this position come up that I think you would really like. And I looked at the job and I was like, yeah, you know what, this is exactly what I think I'd like. And I applied, went through all the interview, and yeah, here I am today.
That's great, thank you. And again, I'm picking up on various strands of what you're saying, and I'm going to try and sort of sum it up towards the end, but so much useful stuff there for the students that are watching around some of the things that you did that really helped. So James, what about you? How did you get into your current role?
Yeah, so I must admit, Beth and Ella is a very similar sort of a kind of thing. I'd echo what Beth said. I was emailing when I was started university. I had not a clue what I wanted to do, so I was emailing everyone, and I did a placement year. Like Beth, unfortunately, I went to academic lab, and I realized absolutely really didn't enjoy the academic environment. But while it definitely wasn't time wasted, it was really useful to kind of help me sort of steer me, okay, I know I don't want to do that, and steer me more towards, I like biology, I'm doing a biology degree, I'm still not sure what to do, I don't want to do academic, what about industry? Oh, what's in industry? Oh, Illumina, oh, Illumina's in industry, what about trying to go there? Came into Illumina as a lab technician. And then when I was as a lab technician, I saw people sort of sat in the office all day working on the computers, and I was like, what do they do? I'm running around the lab. So I emailed them. And they said they're in bioinformatics. I emailed the person in bioinformatics, said, can I shadow you? Can I see what you do? How do you do it? And then that manifested into doing a master's within Illumina into bioinformatics. So I followed that, and then sort of did part-time masters, part-time working in bioinformatics, which was really great because you could see the skills, you learned some skills within the classroom, and you could apply them directly. And then that was about 2 years ago. So I did that during the pandemic, and I was just working virtually in bioinformatics over the past 2 years. And so, yeah, it's just trial and error, but just slowly getting to the place, just asking, emailing, seeing what people do, having a friendly chat is how I got here.
That's so useful, thank you. So I just wanted to kind of pull a few threads out of what all of you have said. I think one of the things which almost all of you, Beth, I can't remember if you said exactly the same, but you certainly intimated there was some sort of similar feeling here. None of you were like, oh, in 5 years' time when I finish my degree, I'm going to be working as X in company Y. One of the things which I used to constantly tell the young people that I taught was, don't worry if you don't know what to do. It's so unusual to know what you want to do, and actually sometimes if you do know what you want to do, it kind of funnels you into some very, very traditional and perhaps not exactly the right path for you, because lots of people have heard of some very sort of common jobs in science, but many wouldn't have heard of, for example, bioinformatics or something like that. So first of all, I would say to what all of you have kind of said is, you didn't know, and yet here you are in jobs that you enjoy, and that are making a difference to human health. Secondly, I would say every single one of you reached out to other people to talk to them about sort of what they did or what they might do. So summer jobs, certainly when I was at university, I had holiday jobs. I had to pay off my overdraft. I don't know if you guys were the same. I didn't do my summer job for any kind of social reason. I had to pay off my overdraft. But if you're going to do that, and if you need to do that, then gosh, get a job in something that you're actually interested in, or I think you might be interested in, because apart from anything else, it's also giving you some kind of work experience, building your network, and the idea of an internship. Ella, I think you said you went through an internship where you get a chance to try lots of different things. Summer placements. I can't remember which one of you said you spammed people. Was that you, Beth? Beth, yes, spammed people. So essentially, don't be afraid to write emails to people to say, hey, I'm interested in this. Could I come along and spend a day? People will be keen to work with young people who want to find a little bit more out. Try things. James said he did a placement in an academic lab and he realized he didn't enjoy it. Well, that's a win. If you find out you don't enjoy it, then that's not something that you're then going to sort of pursue probably for your career. But while you were there, James, you thought about some other things you might do. And then also taking a job somewhere which isn't necessarily what your forever job, but then having a look around. So James, you identified some people in there sitting at computers doing something that looks interesting. Who are they and what are they doing? And that looks like more fun than what I'm doing. And then securing a job there. So I guess I want to sort of reassure young people that people in general, people don't say this is what I will do and then 5 years later end up in that job. Apart from anything else in science, often the jobs that are going to be there in 5 years don't exist now, because as the technology develops and the ideas develop, the jobs can change. So work experience is a really critical thing, getting experience, but that doesn't mean you have to know someone who's already in there. You know, Beth's approach of kind of spamming people, or James's approach of getting in, you know, get into the organization on a job and then you'll meet other people. Or Ella, I think you said you were doing you found out a little bit about supply chains because you were doing a summer job in a warehouse. So all of those things are really, really helpful ways in. So thank you for that. So I'm going to ask the question and then I'm going to mention something else, just give you a minute to think. I'm going to ask you each next what the best thing about your job is. And you get bonus marks if you can all come up with something different. For those of you watching, we've got one question in the Q&A. Please do ask some more if you would like to, either to individuals or to the group if you want to. We've got one there, which I'll come up to at the end. We're going to do the questions in about 5 or 10 minutes. So I'm going to ask the question about what the best thing about your job is. But secondly, I'm going to ask the next question, which is kind of advice for people who want to go into this area. What advice would you give them if you were to give them any advice? So first of all, let me see. Beth, I'm going to come to you first because Ella's been first every time. So let's give you a go at being first, Beth. So what's the best thing about your job? And have you got any advice for young people thinking about going into this sort of field?
Yes, I think the best thing about my job is having it so different every day. You know, one week I might be in the labs, the next week I'll be working at home. I get to travel a lot and fly around God knows where, but it's really interesting and exciting. And it's also nice to actually, like I mentioned before, see it being applied in the labs. You get to have those conversations like, oh, like, what are you testing for? What are you going to use this data for? You know, how is it related to diagnosing or medicine, or how are you using it? So yeah, it's just really interesting to see the science and also to have such like different days.
Thank you. Now, as well as going around in your car, do you literally fly around? Do you get to go abroad? Yes.
I do, yes.
Travel. Okay, so that is a big plus for lots of people.
Yeah, I mean, obviously not so much recently with COVID, but yeah, there is the possibility to travel around and fly, which is really nice.
Where's the coolest place you've been?
It's mainly Europe at the moment.
Okay.
So I've been to Portugal and Spain.
Wow. Okay, that will certainly appeal to some of the young people watching this. Great, thank you very much. James, let's ask you next. The best thing about your job and any advice you would give.
Yeah, I think the best thing about my job is helping people in a collaborative manner. So you might find someone who is a sample manager and they've got about 10 different spreadsheets, and then you can go in there and be like, actually, you know, I can write a quick program to help do this whole job for you. And then you write that for them and they're like, oh, that's amazing. And, you know, you really help speed their role up. Alongside the point I mentioned earlier, which is really enjoyable, is problem solving on real kind of samples and real situations. You know, you've made it, solved a problem, and it helps a patient down the line. If I could give some advice, I think a thing you mentioned, Joe, it sounds almost like perfect and identical, perfect opportunity. Kind of these kind of challenges where you can kind of use real data sets and have a look and find out the genes and use this kind of thing is amazing. I'd say as well, because having the opportunity to develop, if I know that people do Python and learn programming language at school now, I think no matter what role you go into, I think having in bioinformatics, that's an essential skill, but also can help you in any role or any job you do. Having this kind of understanding of how to do a bit of programming is really useful. So I think any sort of opportunities that come along that you can sort of have this idea of working with any data and understanding genomic data that comes up, and programming, which there's lots of resources online that you can use, but also just reach out to someone who you might know who works in the industry, who does a bit of programming, computing, and ask them, how do you get started? How do you actually develop some basic tools is a good way.
Great, thank you. And you're absolutely right. We have got a couple of projects around this. And one of the things that we really want to do is to give young people who might not know anyone who's in this field the chance to you know, ask you guys questions through the chat, or if they can't do that, maybe email us a question later, but also have the chance. So all our projects have scientists, we work with scientists on them, so they can have a webinar with them, and at our conferences they can actually meet them and ask them those questions, because there's nothing like meeting people actually doing it to almost be reassured that actually you don't have to have some magical, you know, some magical wand when you're at university to decide to get into it. What you need to do is just be a bit persistent and take the opportunities that are given to you. I think that's really important. Thank you. And Ella, best thing about your job and any advice you would give?
I feel like the best thing is probably pretty similar to what James has said, because yeah, it's like I really enjoy sort of collaborating with a lot of people in the company. I guess it's more internal, but yeah, it feels really rewarding, like being able to help people with sort of the processes of whatever they're purchasing. And yeah, so like day to day, like I'll have like a lot of different calls with so many different people in different not companies, departments. So I'll have people from like HR calling me being like, how do I raise this requisition? Like I need to buy this, like how can you help me with this? And yeah, it just feels like really rewarding being able to like chat to a lot of different people, sort of hear what they're doing as well. And yeah, being able to help them. Yeah, as well as also sort of the problem solving aspect. Because we work on like an inbox which we have with suppliers, so that's when we have a purchase order that will be sent out to the supplier. If there's any issues with that, then they'll contact this, so it's sort of like resolving that. So yeah. And advice, advice, yeah, so obviously, yeah, even like when I was ages ago, I didn't really know what supply chain was, but I guess nowadays it is quite a lot like in the media, in the news. So if you do find that it's interesting, yeah, there's a lot to like read about nowadays with the current affairs, how that is affecting supply chain. And yeah, same again, like getting work experience in it. Even when I applied for the internship at Illumina, I applied for it. It was a sort of broad supply chain internship, but I remember they asked me, like, what part of supply chain do you know what you want to do? And at that point, I was like, like, I don't even know what's in supply chain, but it was so good to sort of get experience in the different areas within it. And I think especially with supply chain, it is sort of getting experience and understanding what you're actually doing, because the job titles aren't very like familiar with most people. I'll tell most of my friends like what I'm doing and their faces are blank.
That's great. Thank you very much, Ella. And again, reassuring that you felt you didn't really know much about it when you began, but that's why people do work experience, and that's why people do internships, to find out, right? Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, so this question, and I have to sort of caveat this with, obviously you're not going to be letting out any official secrets about what the company's up to or anything like that, but I am interested to know, in terms of your general field, anything you can say about what kind of exciting stuff might be coming up, or personally, you know, if you want to talk about, you know, there's a progression route within your role, what might it be, you know, so the question is, what exciting directions might your work go in the future? And it might be that actually you can't answer that because you don't know at the moment, but if you can, I would love to hear about it. Beth, can we start with you on this one?
Yep. Well, obviously with sequencing and genetics, it's come so far in the past few years. It's quite hard to predict, you know, how far we'll be in the next 5 years. Anything could happen or change, you know, it's ever advancing. But I think one of the main routes in terms of cancer especially is like precision medicine and personalized medicine. It's already starting to come about now, but being able to match, you know, a drug to a target gene in someone and be able to like match them perfectly for each individual patient, I think is going to be really the way forward in terms of healthcare, which is really exciting and heavily involves sequencing. So I think that would be the main part. I think I'd say, yeah.
Okay, that's great. And we've clearly got some very very on the ball attendees, because actually one of the questions we have is about whether DNA sequencing is going to become a more central process to designing medicines. So certainly from what you're saying, it sounds like it might be you know, a really important way forward. And there's another part of the question which probably you can answer, Beth, which is about, are we already using gene sequencing for designing drugs?
Yeah, so I think a lot of research companies are using genetic sequencing to help design drugs, but also at the moment it's more using genetic sequencing to match patients to already existing drugs as well. So there's two sides of it. You can use it to either design the drug to match a patient, or you can find a patient who matches an existing drug. So it can go both ways, but it is definitely starting to being used now and will obviously get used a lot more in the future.
Great, thank you very much. So next up, James, exciting directions for the future.
Yeah, I guess for bioinformatics and for software, and for, I think everyone's excited about machine learning and the possibilities that can bring. So machine learning is basically teaching a computer to be able to predict and to understand things, so you can have it analyze pretty much anything. So it's going to help speed up a lot of decision making. It's going to help automate a lot of processes. It could be helped to correct any mistakes within from the sequences. And it's a really cool project and really cool technology that's coming out. I'd echo what Beth had said as well. Like if 5 years time, it's really hard to fit. It's one of the best things about working in science and STEM and this kind of thing is that things move so quickly, and like new technologies come out all the time. So if you enjoy continuously learning and working in the field and keep updating your skills and keep learning new things that are coming in, I think it's a great one for that, and one I'm excited about personally is machine learning.
Great, thank you very much. And this is one of the things we talk about a bit, James, is about so I obviously I was a science teacher for nearly 20 years, and one of the things that was a bit frustrating was, obviously it's absolutely critical for young people to know about the knowledge of science, you know, the information of science, and to develop their practical skills. But I use the analogy sometimes when we teach young people science, if we don't allow them to do real research where you don't know what the answer is going to be and your experiment goes wrong and you have to do it again, you know, real science, like the sort of science that you're doing, James, where you're trying something out and then you're saying, no, this doesn't work. How can we speed this up? How can we improve it? It's like teaching football, but never allowing the young people to play a match. So, you know, you teach them the rules and you teach them the drills, you know, they practice the drills, but they never get to play a match. And it's the matches that are the most fun part, right? And in science, the research, finding out new things and really engaging your brain with those is the really fun part. And so that's what we're trying to do. But from what you're saying, it sounds as though, you know, the skills that are going to be needed in the matches in the future are around computer programming, identifying how, it's about problem solving, right? Setting and collaborating with other people working in the field and that sort of thing, which is the stuff that I think probably all of us really love about science. Terrific. Okay, so we're on to the questions, and one of the questions we already have been able to answer because it was around medicines. If anyone would like to add another question, please go ahead. I've got one which is quite specific, and I'm not certain whether the panelists will be able to answer this, but I have mentioned a couple of times the importance of placements and opportunities like that, and there's a question around whether Illumina offers work experience placements or summer placements. I know, Ella, because you've mentioned it a couple of times, they do offer internships. So I guess the question would be, if you're looking for something like that at Illumina or anywhere else, what's the best way in? Is it to write a letter? Is it to email? Like what's the best, what's kind of advice would you give? So Ella, you found an internship. How did you find that?
So I was actually looking for, I was searching for jobs on LinkedIn, and Illumina, the HR people post a lot of openings for internships and placements, like how Beth did a placement. They post a lot of that on LinkedIn, so I say that's quite a good place to look. I also know that I think the Illumina sponsors, actually I don't want to say this if it's wrong, but I think they also might sponsor some apprenticeships, but I think they would also post all of that on LinkedIn, or through LinkedIn you could probably contact the HR team or specific people, and they definitely,
Sorry, go ahead, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, no. I was just going to say, if you don't have LinkedIn, though, obviously then they would post everything like on Google or like their general job opening sites. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I guess some information there about what Illumina do and how they use LinkedIn and things like that. But I guess if there was as a student, if there was a particular company or a particular organization that you knew was really big and what you were interested in. So today we're talking about, bioinformatics and gene sequencing. But if it was something completely different you were interested in, then you can find out what companies and organizations are offering that, and maybe trying to link up with them on Twitter or LinkedIn or something like that, and just watch what's coming out. So that's a really good way to find a kind of a way in that way. James or Beth, anything else to add about like how to kind of secure that first step in? James, you've unmuted yourself, so if you've got something to add there.
I guess it's almost what I didn't take advantage of, and not until the later years in universities. When you university use the professors and lecturers, often they'll have a lot of industry contact. So go to them and just after a lecture, or if you're tutoring, say, I'm really interested in this area, is there any way you could help me out? And then even if they don't, they will know someone, or someone in the university sort of employment career team will help you. So just, utilize, is that proactive step. I guess the lecturer's not going to come up to you and go, oh, James, I see you got good marks in this. Do you want to do a placement in here? You've got to go to them and say, I'm interested in bioinformatics. I'm interested in this. If you do anyone, how would you go about? I'd really sort of utilize those contacts.
That is such a good point. And I think often students feel like that's cheeky, or, they feel like they're not confident enough to do that. But from being on the other side of that, like the person that people sometimes come to and say, do you know this person? Do you know that person? I love it when people do that. I'm sure you guys are the same. It feels as though you could give somebody a leg up and an opportunity. So again, even though, we're talking to you guys from Illumina today, actually IRIS as an organization, we know a lot of people. Like, we don't provide work experience, but we do know a lot of people. So if there's something really specific that you're thinking of, or something related to your project, and you think, I'm really particularly interested in this aspect of the project, and you're doing an IRIS project, get your teacher to drop us a line, and it might be that we know someone who could provide an opportunity. As I said, we don't provide work experience, but if you're like desperate, we do want to build networks for young people if we can. And yes, going up to a university lecturer or somebody you know who's already working in the field is an absolutely fantastic choice. But if you're not in that position and you can't do that, then there are other opportunities. And even if you've done an IRIS project and you've left IRIS, we've got an IRIS alumni group of young people who've gone through IRIS projects and then gone into sort of university or through apprenticeships, and who we still, if we can, will support in kind of building their networks. That's great, thank you. Okay, well, I've got one more question, and this is a tricky one. I don't know how honest you guys are going to want to be about this one. I don't know if this is from a student or a teacher. It's from Anonymous. What, if anything, would you have done differently at school to help you get where you are now? So it might be nothing, of course, but let's start off with Beth for this one.
Yeah. So if I could have done anything differently, I feel like I would have taken the pressure off myself. Because when I was in school, I kind of felt a bit stressed, like there was a lot of pressure on me to decide what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go. And in my head, I thought, if I go to university and do a certain degree, I'm stuck in that route. Or, if I do an apprenticeship, I'm stuck in that route. But you're really not. It is just a stepping stone to open even more avenues. So just take the pressure off and just make sure you're doing something you enjoy. So if you like science, stay with science, and you'll get opportunities coming towards you, and you'll be able to look at them and think, would I enjoy that? You try it out like James did, and you might not, and that's fine. Or you might try it out and be like, yeah, this is what I also want to do. And then, I'd also say, don't be embarrassed to reach out. So when I was in high school and university, I would find labs on Google and just send an email to their HR or just to their get in contact with us email. And I just had a template email that I'd send to everyone, be like, hi, like, this is where I'm at, this is what I want to do, I'm looking for some work experience, and I'd love to come and see what you do and get anything you can give me, essentially. Like, can I come watch for a day? Can I come watch for a week? And everyone always wants to help. No one's ever going to shut you down and say no. They'll, people want to help, people want to get you in the industry and help however they can. So don't feel the pressure and don't be embarrassed. is what I'd say.
That is such good advice. Thank you, Beth. Yeah, absolutely. People want to help. Yes, people want to help you. So ask, because exactly as James said, your lecturer won't notice you came top in whatever and say, oh, you came top in this. What about this? Because actually that enthusiasm and that gumption to ask is part of the kind of recipe for success. It's part of what people are looking for. And, you know, you're the only one who knows what you're really kind of interested in and what you really want to do. So yeah, be brave, and yes, take the pressure off yourself. And I think particularly relevant at the moment, and I can imagine all the teachers cringing at this. So I'm not saying, you know, don't do your work and things like that. What I'm saying is you don't have to know now what you're going to do. And actually, though it feels like it, you know, the university that you go to or the course that you choose or the grade that you get, it doesn't define you. Everyone's career pathway is like this, and you grow as you go. And so if you've got your exams coming up, you know, they are important, but they are not the be all and end all, and you can still end up doing what you want to do. There's lots of different ways in. Okay, terrific. James, so this is yes, what would you do differently at school if you knew now?
I think what Beth said is so true. Like it really was. I felt there's so much pressure. I had a friend who was going to be a vet, and that was guaranteed. They were going to be a vet, and that was going to do. And the other person was going to be a teacher, and another person. And I was sat there really confused and lost, and I was stressed. I was thinking, oh, what I'm going to do. And then even when I picked biology, and again, agree with Beth, because I was worried about, oh, I'm not going to be able to get a job. I'm not going to get any money. It's going to be all this kind of thing, and really stressed and worried. And yeah, I'd 100% take that stress off and follow the interest that comes about. Yeah, I won't be afraid of trying things and deciding you don't like it. Definitely don't sort of pick something and go, well, I've said I want to do this, let's try it. And you know if you enjoy it or not when you're there. But I guess more practical advice, I would do a lot more Python and programming. But that's something that but you don't just finish when you finish at university or college or school. That's not a point where you finish your professional development or your skills you can pick up and learn. Most of the things you do pick up and learn on the job. Just because you didn't take a certain course or someone didn't teach you this thing doesn't mean you can't pick it up and learn it yourself or go back and do a course or learn it on the roll. So even now I'm thinking, oh, I want to do this, I want to take this course, I want to develop onto that, I want to develop this skill, I want to do that. So I think that's something to bear in mind as well. It's not like you're finished and that's a fixed path and you're stuck in whatever role you are. You can develop and learn. So that's, less pressure and more Python.
Terrific. That's great. Thank you. And yes, another plug here then for our COVID-19 project, where Python is one of the skills that you'll develop while you do it. Ella, anything from you about, if you were back at school, what would you have done differently?
The others both answered it so well. I agree with the not put as much pressure on yourself. And also I think just open your mind that there's so many opportunities. I think at school you just have these set job titles in your head. When I was at school, I was like, oh, I want to do medicine just because I liked science. And I thought that was the only job apart from doing research. But then there's just so many, when you start looking at what jobs are out there, it's so broad, and job titles you see and you won't know what they are, but you'll read into it, and the skills and whatever you're using is what is really interesting. So I'd say, yeah, definitely just when you're at school, just follow what you feel passionate about, what you're interested in. And then, yeah, just take it as it comes.
That's great. Thank you. And actually really resonates with something someone told me once, which was that if you love your job, you never work a day in your life. Now, it's not completely true. I do still feel like I work, but I do love my job. And I feel as though the learning point you made, James, about, it feels kind of like when you're at school, you do your GCSEs, you do your A-levels, and then you go to university and your learning is done, except maybe you have to do an exam at the end of university, but then your learning is done. But the reality is every job you're learning all the time, and that's kind of the most fun part, right? That's the bit where you really feel like you're sort of developing and improving and enjoying. So yeah, really exciting there. So and thank you, really good advice as well. So there's another question here. It's a kind of question about Iris. So this is about projects like the COVID-19. So it's a question about whether you can do them as an individual or whether you have to do them as part of a school. So we do ask that schools are members of Iris in order to make the projects available to their students, except for we've got a project which is one we developed during lockdown called Research at Home. So if you are interested in your school joining, then speak to your teacher. If you're interested in doing the at-home project, then drop us a line through our contact, and then we can have a look at that. Okay, so we're bang on time. Amazing. You three are epic. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed chatting to you. This webinar will be available, a recorded version will be available online. So if you, I don't recommend it, but it's entirely up to you. If you want to listen to what you said and what everyone said later, you can watch it again. And for the students and staff watching, we're really grateful that you gave us some of your time on this Tuesday afternoon. And we hope that you feel that you've got something worthwhile out of it. And Ella and James and Beth, we're really grateful for your time. And we hope that you continue to enjoy what you're doing with Illumina. And yes, keep an eye on this space for hopefully some further work with the organisation. All right, thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.